What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the SkillCapped 11.17 tier list update. There are a ton of massive changes this patch, as 4 different items will be altered. Amumu now has 2 Q charges, while Viego and Zed are being hit with nerfs. To break it all down for you guys, we've gathered our challenger players and have analyzed the most recent data so you can get a perfect read on the meta. But before we get into it, be sure to check out SkillCapped if you want to truly get better at League of Legends. We're the only service that offers a money-back guarantee if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service. We do this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't work for you, then you shouldn't pay. Learn more at the end of this video or click the link in the description for a special discount. So without any further ado, let's get started. The first item change we need to discuss is a nerf to Divine Sunderer, as the AD will drop from 40 to 35. On champions who have a viable alternative, we'll see Divine lose some priority for 11.17, but it won't completely fall out of meta. For example, someone like Ezreal, who performs very well with Essence Reaver, will want to opt for that build more often now. Irelia, who can do just as well with Shield Bow and Gore Drinker, likely drops Divine in most situations. Overall, the change is solid, as Divine will remain viable, just not the #1 purchase on so many different champions. A Serpent Fang nerf is headed to live, with the lethality dropping from 18 down to 12. Serpents has been a staple on many assassin picks for months now, so it's definitely a warranted change. Many players would just pick up Serpents regardless of if the enemy comp had any shielding, so this change will make you have to think a little more about your purchase. If the enemy comp has no shielding at all, then prioritizing an alternative lethality item will be much more efficient now. We've been waiting for this one for a while, as Wit's End will finally be nerfed. On-hit magic damage is lowered from 15 scaling to 80, with linear scaling from levels 1 to 18 to now 15 damage at levels 1 through 8 and 25 to 80 damage levels 9 to 18. This is a pretty huge nerf for your early to mid-game Wit's End purchase. We've seen so many champions like Ashe, Kog'Maw, and Viego pick up Wits as a core item regardless of enemy comp, but that likely changes now. Against heavy AP opponents, Wits will remain a valuable purchase, but it won't be the must-buy item from previous patches. A very forgotten item in Season 11 in Ghostblade will be buffed for 11.17. The change we're most excited about is the alteration of the build path. Instead of having to purchase a pickaxe, it will be replaced by Caulfield's Warhammer. This is such a great quality of life buff, as the more longswords you have in your build path, the less you'll have to leave base with hundreds of gold in your inventory. Sitting on 700 gold because you're waiting on that pickaxe will be no more. Cost of Ghostblade is lowered as well, going from 3,000 down to 2,900 gold. AD will be reduced from 60 to 55, and you'll now receive 15 ability haste. So overall, 5 less AD in exchange for a better build path, 100 less gold, and 15 haste, which is an amazing trade-off. As a second or third purchase, we can definitely see Ghostblade coming back into meta. Keep in mind the Serpent's nerf will indirectly make Ghostblade even stronger as well. A very simple buff to Hullbreaker will be issued, as the health is going from 300 up to 400. Despite the initial outcry from the community that Hullbreaker would be a broken item, it's been relatively niche since its release. The item is already quite undervalued as a third purchase in games where your win condition is the split push, so don't sleep on Hullbreaker for 11.17. Picks like Nasus, Yorick, Jax, and Camille can use Hullbreaker very well when the correct time arises. And the only rune change we have this patch goes the way of Fleet Footwork. Base healing will be increased from 3 scaling to 60 up to 10 scaling to 100. Bonus AD scaling on heal is going from 30 up to 40%. The AP ratio on heal is increased as well, going from 20 to 30%. The only caveat here is that your healing against minions will be reduced. For melee champs, it's dropping from 100% down to 20%, while ranged is going down from 20 to 10%. So overall, healing against champions is up, but for melee champs especially, healing against minions is down. For someone like Kassadin, who runs Fleet mostly for the minion healing sustain early on, this change is likely net negative. Based on these alterations, it looks like Riot wants to phase out Fleet on melee champs and have it become a more viable purchase for ranged characters. Ever since her set of buffs a few patches back, Irelia has been a hotly contested top laner, so Riot is looking to tone her down a bit. Q heal will be reduced from 12 scaling to 20% AD down to 8 scaling to 16% AD. Being able to sustain up from a big minion wave can be so impactful in those early duels, so we expect this nerf to hit pretty hard. Irelia won't fall out of meta, but she'll now be moving from S down into A tier. After a buff from a few patches back that didn't accomplish much, Riot is circling back on Teemo and will issue another buff in 11.17. E damage will be increased from 11 scaling to 55 up to 14 scaling to 58. 3 extra damage at all ranks won't do much in the grand scheme of things. Teemo will remain an average B tier pick for solo queue. A shift in early laning strength to more late-game power is headed Gangplank's way. Move speed on passive is being lowered from 30% at all ranks to 15 scaling to 30% based on level. Q will now count as a ranged attack, meaning Grasp and Sunderer effects will become much weaker. E now benefits from crit at 125% effectiveness. Max barrels are being increased from 3 at all ranks to 3 scaling to 5. The recharge time, however, is being increased from 18 scaling to 10 seconds up to 18 scaling to 14 seconds. Based on ELO, we see these changes having 2 different outcomes. For the higher ELOs, where players can abuse GP's early laning, the Q and move speed nerf will be pretty impactful. In lower ELOs, where scaling comes into play more often and the early game isn't as important, we expect his power level to rise. For pro play, the change should end up negative or power neutral, whereas for solo queue, we expect GP to become stronger. As a result of these changes, we'll be moving Gangplank into B tier as an average solo queue top lane pick. Our OP tier for top lane will continue to be locked down by Camille and Sett. Even though Divine Sunderer has been nerfed, Camille can do just as well with Trinity Force, so we don't expect the change to negatively affect her overall power level. With so many other top laners indirectly nerfed from Divine Change, Sett will become even better for 11.17. If you guys haven't tried any Lilia top yet and are looking for a good answer to Tom and Camille, then definitely give it a shot. The tanky bruiser build of Frozen Heart and Riftmaker is seeing so much more play as of recent and is proving to work wonders at shutting down meta picks. Our top 3 low elo recommendations for top lane are Mundo, Yorick, and Garen, while Sett, Camille, and Tom are once again your best bans. Let's move on to the jungle now and have a look at a nerf going to Blue Kayn. Passive bonus magic damage will be lowered from 12 scaling to 44% down to 8 scaling to 30%. This is definitely one of the more sizable nerfs we've seen so far, and we see Kayn dropping in priority as a result. Ghostblade buffs will help to compensate a little, but we have Kayn on the fence between A and S tier. We'll drop Kayn down to A for now and continue to monitor his strength throughout the patch, as the Serpent's nerf and Ghostblade buffs will have an effect on his power level too. Viego will be seeing a power shift for 11.17 to incentivize a more offensive setup. Auto range is lowered from 225 down to 200. Passive base healing is lowered from 8% all the way down to 3%. Passive bonus AD ratio, however, is increased from 2.5 up to 3% per 100 AD. Bonus attack speed ratio is going from 2.5 up to 5% per 100 attack speed. In turn, this favors the Kraken Slayer build and makes Divine a much weaker option. Crit scaling on Q is being increased from 0.75 to 1, which makes the crit-focused build even better. Camo radius on E will be increased from 400 up to 450. Slow duration on ultimate is being lowered from 0.5 to 0.25 seconds. To sum it all up, we'll see Viego players shy away from the tankier build and go back to building crit. The crit setup really isn't all that bad anyways. It was just the fact that Divine and Wit's End were completely broken. A build of Kraken into Blade of the Ruined King and Sterix will become most optimal now for this patch. Due to how broken the tankier setup was, we do expect Viego's power level to drop slightly for 11.17, so we'll be moving him from OP down into S. Echo Jungle will see another classic damage to monster buff, as his passive damage to monsters is being increased from 150 to 200%. This is a great buff and exactly what Echo Jungle needs to come back into meta. Early clear is really what gates Echo, so giving him some power in that field is super nice. There's potential Echo makes his way back into S tier, but we realistically see him as a very good A tier jungle in 11.17. Apparently, Riot hasn't sold enough of the new Evelynn skin yet, so they'll be buffing her this patch. Ultimate cooldown will be lowered from 140 scaling to 80 seconds down to 120 scaling to 80 seconds. 20 seconds off at rank 1 is very impactful for solo queue, as Evelynn has the ability to play so much more aggressive the moment it's up. Evelynn will be one of the better junglers for 11.17, as she'll be placed in our S tier. The most interesting changes this patch are being issued to Amumu. Health per level drops from 80 down to 75, while armor per level goes from 3.8 down to 3.5. The massive change is to Amumu's Q, as it will now have 2 charges. To compensate, Q damage is lowered from 80 scaling to 280, down to 70 scaling to 190. AP ratio, on the other hand, is increased from 70 to 85%. Q cooldown will be 3 seconds, while the charge time is 16 scaling to 14 seconds. So you can stack 2 charges, and after using the first, you have to wait 3 seconds to use the next. W damage per second is changed from 8 scaling to 24 up to 12 scaling to 28. W percent of target's max health damage is lowered, going from 1 scaling to 2% down to 1 scaling to 1.6%. And finally, the stun duration on ultimate is going down from 1.5 scaling to 2 seconds to 1.5 seconds at all ranks. So all in all, the Q change should open up some really crafty engage plays and lead Amumu into a more viable state. Imagine the enemy team grouped up in mid lane and you use 1 Q charge on a minion wave, then use the second as you flash Q onto the back line. Even the extra sticking power you'll now have will make finishing off kills way more reliable. The sad mummy will shift back into a good position for solo Q as he'll be moving from B into A tier for 11.17. Alright, having a look at the complete jungle tier list now, we have Jarvan moving into OP tier, and he'll stand above all else for 11.17. Jarvan buffs from last patch have turned him into a godlike solo queue jungler, and as other picks like Viego have become weaker, he rises even further. There are now a lot of really strong S tier champions, as picks like Viego and Xin Zhao have moved out of OP tier and are more in line with many other picks. Despite his nerf from last patch, Lee Sin remains a very strong S tier jungler, while Shaco is in an amazing spot again after his bug fix changes. The top 3 low elo jungle picks are Shyvana, Rammus, and Nunu. Viego, Jarvan, and Shaco are a few picks you'll want to consider banning as they're played a ton and are super influential in the meta. Moving on to mid lane now. Riot doesn't approve of Graves being a strong solo lane pick, so he'll see a nerf to his Q spam. In all seriousness though, Graves mid has been extremely busted, so this nerf isn't much of a surprise. Mana cost will be increased from 60 up to 80. We had recently moved Graves into our OP tier for mid lane, but due to this nerf, a shift back down the tier list is in order. One of the main reasons to why Graves mid can work so well is because of his ability to constantly chuck out Qs and keep perma priority. This change will limit Graves' ability to do so, and we'll see him drop from OP down to S for 11.17. Riot's really giving it to Zed this patch as he'll be hit with some direct nerfs, and keep in mind the Serpent's Fang changes negatively influence him as well. Q-AD ratio is going from 1 up to 1.1. E ratio drops from 0.8 down to 0.65. R cooldown will be increased from 120 scaling to 60 to 120 scaling to 80. Not the end of the world for Zed, but he'll surely shift down a slot in the tier list as a result of these nerfs. Ghost Blade changes are one thing Zed has going for him, so that may help to level out the effects of these nerfs. Just like Graves, Zed will be dropping from OP down to S for 11.17. It's been a really long time since we've seen Lissandra in the solo queue meta, so Riot's giving her another couple buffs. Base AD is going from 53 up to 55. Q mana cost will be lowered from 60 scaling to 80 down to 55 scaling to 75. We see Lissandra making her way into a very respectable A tier position now. Especially with picks like LeBlanc and Katarina being highly contested, don't sleep on Lissandra for 11.17 as she can shut down those picks super well. A shift away from on-hit towards crit is what Riot's plans are for Uxin this patch. There will be a few bug fix changes along with Uxin no longer being able to claim scoundrels when he's dead. E damage will be lowered from 30 scaling to 130 down to 30 scaling to 110. Scaling, however, is seeing a buff going from 10% bonus AD up to 17.5% bonus AD. The cooldown of Uxin Ultimate when cancelled by crowd control is going from 15 down to 5 seconds. Due to the Wit's End nerf along with the bonus AD ratio buff, rushing a Kraken Slayer or Gale Force will become much more valuable now. Against double AP mid and jungle, Wit's End will have its purpose, but diversity in build paths will rise now. We expect Uxin's overall power level will drop slightly due to the E change, but not enough to push him down the tier list as he'll remain in S. So with all the mid lane changes out of the way, our tier list is looking a little different from last patch. Katarina will now stand as the only OP pick for 11.17, with Graves and Zed dropping down. Lucian is being hit with changes that will shift him away from mid back down to bot lane, so we definitely recommend staying away from him for solo queue. Assassin picks like Talon and Kiana are ones to watch as the Ghost Blade buffs will give them a nice indirect boost. Top 3 low elo picks for mid lane are Kayle, Malzahar, and Annie. The highest priority bans for this patch include Cat, Zed, and Uxin. Another round of Xayah buffs are headed to live this patch as her Q cast time will be lowered from 0.25 seconds down to 0.25 scaling to 0.1 second based on attack speed. Our damage is going from 125 scaling to 375 to 200 scaling to 400. 75 extra damage at level 6 is absolutely insane, as Xayah's all-in potential will become so much stronger. We wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if the Rakan-Xayah duo has a major comeback moving forward. For the first time in Season 11, Xayah will become a strong ADC option as she'll be placed in our A tier. A couple buffs for bot lane Lucian are in store, and it's about time. Base AD drops from 64 down to 62. To give Lucian more power in the duo lane, his passive will have a new effect called Vigilance, where ally buffs empower Lucian's next 2 basic attacks to deal an additional 14 plus 10% total AD magic damage. Mana cost on W is lowered from 70 down to 60, while allies who proc the mark will also trigger Lucian's new passive. Our damage per shot is being lowered from 20 scaling to 60 down to 15 scaling to 45. Number of shots is changed from 22 scaling to 34 down to 22, however the number of shots will scale off 25% of Lucian's crit. As you can see in the background gameplay, a Lucian at level 8 with Kraken Slayer will be dealing around 150 extra damage with an entire culling. Overall, we see Lucian making some major strides heading into this patch and expect him to be a viable bot lane pick again. A tier is where Lucian will land for 11.17. A couple buffs to bring some life back to Senna AD carry are in line. Passive attack speed ratio is going from 0.4 to 0.45. Passive crit damage jumps from 150 up to 160%. And the big one that will help Senna ADC the most is that her passive soul rate drop on minion kill goes from 4 up to 8%. This is massive, as a 50% increase on soul drop rate will help you scale so much better. We expect Senna to become a strong ADC option now in 11.17, as she'll be moving from B into A tier. Looking at the bot lane tier list, it's really the indirect nerfs that will influence how we alter the list for 11.17. Wit's End has been a heavy staple on champs like Ashe and Cog for many patches, and with it being nerfed, they'll both be dropping out of OP tier. Ziggs, of all champions, will continue to reign supreme as the #1 bot lane pick. As Ashe and Cog become indirectly weaker, the bot lane meta is super diverse now. So many champions are in and around the same power level with a bunch of great S and A tier picks to choose from. A couple champs you want to spam to climb low elo the fastest are Ziggs, Miss Fortune, and Ashe. Using your ban on Vayne, Ashe, or Ziggs are great options for 11.17. Leona will be the only support nerf to this patch, as her W bonus armor and magic resist will drop from 20 scaling to 45 down to 15 scaling to 40. Surely a much needed nerf, as Leona's early all-in power is completely nuts with Aftershock and W active. Despite the change, our analysts still see Leona clinging on to an S tier position, so continue to abuse her while you can. And the final champion change heading into next patch is going to be Nami. Base health is increased from 475 to 490, while her W mana cost is lowered from 70 scaling to 130 to 70 scaling to 110. Since Nami players max W out first, 20 less mana at level 9 for mid-game will be really nice. We've had Nami rated as one of the better supports in previous patches, so these buffs will solidify her as one of the best S tier picks. So, for the support tier list, Blitzcrank and Sona are locking down the OP tier positions. Both amazing champs right now due to their recent direct buffs, so they're the picker ban supports in 11.17. Senna will become slightly stronger in the support role thanks to the buffs, but not enough to warrant a move up into OP tier. If you can play a good Nami, then definitely look to pick her up after those buffs. Watch out for Pyke, as the Ghost Blade changes will have a positive effect on his power level too. Our top 3 low elo picks for support are Sona, Blitz, and Zyra. A couple good bans to consider are Lulu, Blitzcrank, and Sona. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little bit more about SkillCapped. So we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offer that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent challenger players into Elo Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $4.99 a month if you're serious about improving. So that's going to wrap up for our 11.17 tier list. Good luck out there this patch, and we'll catch you back in the next one.